Good afternoon and welcome to today's town hall meeting. I'm pleased to have this important conversation with Labour Secretary Marty Walsh, someone who I've had an enormous amount of respect for throughout his career. And I'm so pleased he's taken the helm at the Department of Labour. Today's event is sponsored by T-Mobile. And before we begin, I have shared with the Secretary's office a list of all the national organizations that are part of today's conversation. So with that, thank you so much, Secretary Walsh.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited about the conversation. And before we started, the people that are watching, Gary and myself had a walk down memory lane in the city of Boston, so it was great.
Well, thank you so much. Secretary, you've been on the road for several months now. I've been following you on Twitter. We've been trying to organize this meeting for a while, and we finally booked you, but you've been traveling a lot lately. You've met with workers, you've gained a perspective on their fears, and you've got a sense of what's happening in people's lives that I think will inform your leadership. Can you share with the audience today your thoughts on the last few months from your listening tour and what you've learned about our nation's workforce?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, you know, one thing that I've seen up close and personal as I go around the country is that we're still living in a pandemic. And I think that we can't lose sight of what happened in March of 2020 in the United States of America, when basically a lot of cities and towns across this country and a lot of states basically shut down, and people have gone through a lot. Anyone who's watching, if you lost a loved one to COVID, my thoughts and prayers go out to you. When I was mayor of Boston, I would say that at the end of every press conference, because we would give a number of the people in Boston that we lost due to COVID-19. So hang in there. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and we'll get there. But when I go around the country, what I'm hearing now is people truly want to work hard. They want to be productive. They want to live with dignity. But they're also taking a closer look right now at their options and opportunities. And unlike any other really period in the history of our country, that people do have opportunities. Our economy certainly over time has not provided dignity and security to all workers, especially to older workers and workers with disabilities, workers of color, and women. And I think that we, as the president talks about a need to invest in our workforce, it's not only the right thing to do, but it's a smart thing to do, because the workforce is the most fundamental piece of how we move forward. So I think that that's important. The president has proposed a physical and human infrastructure bill, if you will, a Build Back Better agenda, which addresses the needs for workers' health needs, workers' education needs, workers' training needs. And when you think about those investments, and when I think about those investments, I don't necessarily think about them as Secretary of Labor. I think about them what I do as mayor of Boston. And we really haven't seen those investments in our lifetime in those different areas. And we need to really make sure that as these investments go through, as these bills pass, that we make a real big impact on people's lives to create opportunities to pull people into the middle class. And that's what people want when I go around the country. They want a house. They want food on the table. They want to live with dignity and respect. They want to be able to retire with dignity and respect. They want health care. I hear this over and over and over again. And I think that that's really important. And in my role now as Secretary of Labor at the Department of Labor, we're certainly focused on building equity into our workforce training systems, meeting everyday workers where they are at that particular moment, and help them overcome any barriers they may face. So, I honestly feel a lot of optimism for our country as we move forward here. Although right now, I think if you watch the news or you read the paper, you don't feel the optimism. But as I travel around the country, I can see and feel the optimism with people.
Secretary, I want to get back later to the question of targeted investment and equity, if I may.
Yep.
Before I do that, I want to move on to this question. As you know, many of the organizations on today's platform are partners of the Department of Labor on the Senior Community Service and Employment Program, otherwise known as CSEP. It is the only federally funded workforce program targeted to low-income adults. My first question to you is, what is your position on supporting and protecting and growing this program? And I say this because older workers have been the most impacted by the COVID pandemic. the economic fallout. And so many of them will find it even harder to go back into the workforce. So can you give the audience today your position vis-a-vis the CSEP program?
Yeah, I mean, the CSEP program, and those that don't know what the CSEP program is, it's the Senior Community Service Empowerment Employment Program. It's a valuable resource for low-income seniors. This program targets and supports particularly unemployed, low-income individuals age 55 or older who have been hit hard by the pandemic. I want to not just protect this program, but also let people know how much I support this program. You know, again, a lot of today, I'll probably go back to my time as in my past life, whether it's a mayor or a legislator. I would see, you know, I would always be concerned about where we're headed with our older population in this country and not having the supports that they need. So, you know, I'm committed to protecting and supporting this program. I see the need for it. I see the need for it in urban America, in rural America, and in important cities and towns. The previous administration proposed the elimination of the program. Under my leadership, the Department of Labor is going to maintain the support. In this administration, the Biden-Harris administration is interested in increasing funding for workforce development across the board. And I think there's so much more that we can be doing in terms of partnerships and relationships. I do feel that. And to that partnership point, I just want to just take a minute. I think about all the older adults here in the country that will be that are going to American Job Centers that are funded by the Department of Labor and in the Department of Labor, and how these programs can really offer opportunity to give back and serve their community. So I think that, you know, obviously I'm a big supporter for expansion, big supporter supporting, and it's neat. And, you know, when I say this, I'm saying this in the best way. Unfortunately, it's needed in our country, and we need to strengthen the programs that are needed in our country, not eliminate them.
So you are supportive of CSEP, and you will support its protection, and you'll encourage its growth through the appropriations channel.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have two friends in Boston. One person's name is Joanne Hilferty, who runs Goodwill Industries in Madison Park. You know her, right?
I know. Yes, I do. I do.
Yes, Joanne, and of course, Marianne Walsh, a wonderful friend of mine and someone you know very well, both of whom run the CSEP programs, both of whom are serving their community with rare distinction. So as you visualize CSEP at the local level, please visualize Joanne and her work and Marianne and her work and why this program is important. Mr. Secretary, I have a friend in Boston. This is a true story, by the way. Her name is Tara. She lives in Lower Mills, Dorchester, a community that's very familiar to you too. Tara has spent much of the last 20 years working for a high-end retailer in the Back Bay. Last year, that retailer was forced to close as a result of the COVID pandemic. And Tara no longer wishes to remain in retail after her layoff. She would like to upgrade her skills, and in particular, her technological proficiency, to ensure that she will be able to transition into a job that will allow her to work from home. Mr. Secretary, can you map out for me as best you can a retraining pathway for Tara, age 55 and a resident of Lower Mills, Dorchester?
Well, first, Gary, I will. And if Tara's watching, Tara, when you see me walking down on Dorchester Avenue, make sure you grab me, because I live in Lower Mills. So I'll probably see you around St. Greg's or at the Bowery or something. So please don't hesitate to grab me. But we have in the Department of Labor, we have, and I can say this honestly, we have an amazing Department of Office of Disabilities, Employment and Policy, or they call it ODEP for short. There are a lot of acronyms in DC that have many resources available on its website. And anyone that right now, I'll go more into it, but the website is dol.gov/ODEP, ODEP. There are resources to help workers, some of whom have disabilities, also use technology and will be successful in new jobs. So that's our goal. Tara could use ODEP's assessment tools, no question about it. She could take advantage of our inclusive apprenticeship strategies, there's no doubt about it. and she could get good ideas for accommodations to support our goals of working from home. And I think that that's a lot of people are in Tara's situation right now. She could also learn strategies for creating mental health supports and other tools that benefit both workers and employers. So our goal here at the Department of Labor, my goal here is to empower workers, all workers, morning, noon, and night. And that means their work conditions, their workplaces, where they're working, their salaries, all of those different anything to deal with a worker from when they wake up in the morning till they go to bed at night.
That's a long answer, Mr. Secretary. If I can just synthesize that a little bit. The majority of the programs you mentioned, can they be found at a community college? Is that through a workforce investment board, a one-stop?
Yeah, go to the website, dol.gov/ODEP. Our Office of Disability Employment Policy will connect you. Depending on the parts of the country, there are, community college, one of those places, some American Job Centers. So we'll be able to connect people to our own American Job Center.
Terrific, thank you. As you know, by the year 2025, adults over the age of 50 will comprise 25% of the US labor force. So what should we be doing now to ensure that our country's employers and employees are prepared for this demographic shift?
That's a good question. I think there's a lot we can do. I think the department has two terrific resources that can help. One is the Partnership on Employment and Accessible Technology. They call it PEAT. It's a tool to help ensure that accessibility of every aspect of work and technology. So again, helping with technology. It covers purchasing and procuring accessible work technologies. It ensures accessible meetings for employees who telework. I encourage everyone to check that out. I think that we have to, aging and disabilities are not the same thing. However, aging can be increased. The likelihood that a worker may experience changes such as developing disabilities or impact their work life to a greater degree. So we have to talk to employers. Employers and workers can both benefit from fully accessible technologies and easily accommodations prepare them for the demographic shift. So we have more work to do there, but our job at the Department of Labor, my job at the Department of Labor, is to make sure that as we think about this shift in age and working, that we make sure we give the nation's labor force the tools they need to be successful. We're going to do that through Build Back Better with the investments there, and then we're also looking at our workforce development, job training, and apprenticeship program.
All of it is tied to funding through Congress, correct?
It is. It's some of the Build Back Better is a new funding source that we're trying to get through Congress. But we have our money. We do get allocations from the federal government now from Congress that we get now, and we really have to think about. When I think of Secretary of Labor, when I'm around the country, the first question you ask me, one of the things I'm seeing, I'm foreseeing issues that we have in different areas of work life, and we need to make sure we're preparing so that we're filling the voids today and preparing for the voids of tomorrow today, and not waiting for something drastic to happen.
A question just came in because as we think about workforce, I'm also hearing a lot of murmur about the need to address the technological and digital skill shortage among older workers. As we think about the future of work, we have to provide pathways for people to acquire those skills. Do you have a sense that through Build Back Better and through the programs that are currently being funded through the Department of Labor, there will be a greater emphasis on technology and technological skills training to help people prepare for jobs that requires a higher level of proficiency?
Yeah, there's no question that we're going to be looking into the Department of Labor and the federal government, not just in our department, but in Commerce, Department of Commerce and Education as well. But also yesterday, I was in Ohio yesterday. I was in Cleveland, and I was at a technology company, and we were talking about the need for technology companies to invest as well in job force training and development. So I think that it has to be public-private partnerships all across the country because the needs are great. And I think that we can retrain and reskill workers. There's no question about it. And when we talk about that, we need to make sure that we're retraining and reskilling workers of color, workers with disabilities, women into the workforce that might not have ever thought of being in those workforces, because we can do that. And I think so part of it is Department of Labor, and a lot of it is going to be also private sector.
So Mr. Secretary, if you were to think about your own city, Boston, there's a guy in your city, Neil Sullivan. who runs an organization that I knew as the Boston Private Industry Council.
Still that.
Right, it's still there. And as you talked about public-private partnerships, his came to mind. So do you visualize a Neil Sullivan running a Boston PIC style organization that's able to attract private philanthropy, private corporate funding, bringing government dollars to really design programming around the specific skill needs that his clients will need to transition back into the workforce?
You know, there's no question in certain places I see a PIC style, private industry council style organization set up or build off of what's already established in cities and towns across America. I also think there's a space for the Chamber of Commerces around this country
Yes.
to get involved in this space too. Yesterday, I was brought to this meeting by the Cleveland Chamber of Commerce, and I think that you have opportunities to do that. Trade groups, organizations. So I don't think it's one model, one style per se, but I think it can be several different models and styles depending on what's in the region or the area, the city or the county that we're talking about. So I think that sometimes the infrastructure is already there, you just got to build on it. And sometimes that infrastructure might not be there, so we have to build it. And I think that that's where the Department of Labor can really be beneficial, where there's no strong infrastructure. How do we create something there and then work with the right folks to bring to the table? And also, you know, I think we have to find out that organizations that do work with older Americans with disabilities, with, you know, different offending groups and stuff like that to bring them to the table too.
I appreciate that. Back to skills training. One question that came in to me was to ask you, what types of investment in skill training should our country be making to ensure that older workers, especially those living in marginalized communities, I'm thinking about the Black and Brown communities, have to fully participate in the jobs for the future?
That's an easy answer. Registered apprentice programs. They can foster increased labor participation, long-term career development, and higher earning potential for a bunch of different workers in their whatever their experience is. I think that that's key. You know, one of the things that I was able to do here as mayor in Boston and also as the head of the building trades is create a program through the building trades called Building Pathways and Operation Excellence. It was a pre-apprentice program, and the beauty about it was when a person went into that program, there was supposed to be a job at the end of the day for them. Now, I think our success rate was 78%, something like that, and other folks that didn't, they left the field. So the success wasn't not getting the job. The success was people went on something else. We work with the hotel workers in a program they created in Boston as well to create pathways into the hotel industry in Local 26 in Boston. So I think the registered apprenticeship program is the way to go for a lot of people. It doesn't matter what the age is, because what it is, it's preparing you for that job to allow you the opportunity to get into the middle class. That's what we need to do. We need to help, and we also need to help employers create more diverse, equitable, inclusive, and accessible apprentice programs around this country. So I think, again, one essential area of skill need is by workers as they age relates to financial literacy. So we got to, it's a fully inclusive opportunity we have.
But in terms of economic justice through access to opportunity, if I'm one of the civil rights groups on this platform today, they'll be saying to me, Gary, why didn't you press the secretary on how can we really target those underserved Black and Brown communities that if they haven't received their fair share, enough resources are not being targeted to these communities, into these programs to allow our young people on the one end of the spectrum, but also, Mr. Secretary, we have a lot of older people who are trying to get back into the workforce.
Yeah, I'd answer that two ways. Number one is I would say when we talk about apprenticeships, you know, the apprenticeships that we're creating is there needs to be and has to be and going to be a job at the end of the apprenticeship.
Yes.
So the ability to find a job going to an apprentice, there's no point of having apprenticeships that train a whole bunch of people, and at the end of the day, they don't get into the career that they're training for. So number one, so that has to be a given. The second piece is, which is not part of your question, when I talk about financial literacy, we also have to add that component of communities, you know, making sure that there's financial literacy. And one of our departments recently in the state and the federal government, sorry, I'm all over the place today. ODEP recently created a financial toolkit to empower people with disabilities to make sure they have better informed economic decisions throughout their careers. We need to do the same thing for communities of color. We need to do the same thing for women. We did that in the city of Boston. And so it's not just simply getting a job. It's how do you help somebody build wealth? How do you help somebody build their credit? How do you, I mean, whether it's an older worker that might want to buy a home, an older worker that wants to live with some dignity, or a younger worker and a person of color in a community, it's not just simply getting a job. It's also putting some other supports around that person to make sure that they're successful long term.
Well, on that note, and I'm going to drill down into the equity inclusion space here, because that's a big issue among members of this audience. It affects those who are older disproportionately. It affects Black and Brown communities disproportionately. Mr. Secretary, there's an enormous amount of economic insecurity across our nation's rural communities. Lack of access to technology is cited as a major problem. In South Carolina, a state that is described as bad as it gets, 22% of residents lack broadband coverage, and the number is more significant within the African American community. In Congressman Neal's district of Western Mass, I hear the same thing. The lack of broadband access is a huge barrier, both to job training remote and also job access for jobs that may give us a remote or virtual experience. And I hear the same issues in Texas. What is your take or response to the question about technology, the lack thereof, and how that impedes workforce opportunity?
Well, I mean, I think you just have to go back 18 months when we started to send kids from home with Chromebooks because of the coronavirus, and they learned from home. We saw it even here in the city of Boston, where lack of adequate, not even adequate, less than adequate internet service impeded their ability to go online to learn during the school year. Parents were sent home from work to work online, and they didn't have good connection. And a lot of this conversation today has been about technology and the digital divide and getting people, kind of skilled up to work in these fields. But
and it's real.
It's real. And one thing that the president has done, I just want to take a second. The president filed two bills. One was the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and one is the Build Back Better bill that's going through Congress right now. The president proposed a historic investment in infrastructure for broadband in internet service around the country, $56 billion, if I'm not mistaken, that will connect our whole country. Every state would receive at least $100 million to make affordable broadband universal. So not only are they building out the infrastructure to put it actually in the ground or on the wires, whatever they decide to do, every state's going to receive $100 million to make it affordable. So not just that the infrastructure will be there, but how do you make it affordable? That's going to be half the key. The areas with the greatest needs would get the greatest resources. So you have rural parts of our country that there's no connectivity.
Yes.
And you have urban parts of our communities that don't have connectivity. So we need to make sure that we have that. Let's be completely honest that the future of America and the future of our world is all about technology. It's about connectivity, and it's through what we're talking right now. We're doing a Zoom webinar through a computer. That's how people get their information. So we need to make sure that every person has the opportunity to get that information the same way we can today.
I appreciate that. I think you're referring to the Clyburn-Klobuchar bill, the broadband access bill that was.
No, there is a bill, but the president also has it in the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So he's already allocated $56 billion that's going to. There's a separate bill that does it as well. But there's a quick investment if we can get Congress to support these two, the reconciliation bill and the bipartisan infrastructure bill. There'll be $56 billion that'll be going out to cities and towns all across America to build out the network. And then there's $100 million each state would receive to make it affordable. And now those other bills are different. Those are longer term bills, but this would be, you wouldn't have instantaneous connectivity, but you'd have a process to begin.
Well, let's go back to the Build Back Better bill, which I refer to as the infrastructure spending bill. Because as a politician, people will only believe what they want to hear.
Yeah.
I'll be told by my Republican friends at some point that they're spending a lot of money in Washington these days, and they're going to place a huge burden, debt burden on future generations. The price tag currently for the infrastructure bill is around $2 trillion. Mr. Secretary, how are we going to pay for this?
Well, I can tell you this: the middle class is not going to pay for it. The middle class is going to benefit from this, and poor people certainly aren't going to pay for it. They're going to benefit from it, and I think it's our obligation to pass these two bills. I don't view them as spending bills; they're investment bills. We're investing in the future workforce. We're investing in areas such as the cares economy and our older adults and our kids, in broadband, in roads and bridges, in job training, and other places, clean drinking water. And the president's plan would basically have the top, I think it's top 1% of our country, corporations that are paying zero in taxes right now pay for these bills. We have never, when I say this, we've had infrastructure bills in the past supported by Congress that fix roads and bridges. There's no question about that. That's happened. We haven't had one in quite some time, which is a problem. But the other investment is in the cares economy. And when you think about the cares economy, you think about workers working, taking care of older Americans, making $9 an hour.
So we're talking about a major human capital investment for the very first time in living memory.
Yeah, I don't think we've never seen this. I've never seen this type of investment ever before.
And it's not funded through the middle class or the poor. It's funded by corporations and the wealthy, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. But before we close, I thank you for your time. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. Do you have any special message to this audience of national organizations who are doing incredible work in partnership with the Department of Labor around advancing the cause for our nation's older workers by trying to build a pathway for these people back into the workforce? Any special message you want to share with them today?
Well, I just want to say, to the organizations watching today, thank you for your work. We're not in this alone. We're in this collectively together. This year has been, I can't imagine how difficult it's been for your organizations. It's been a hard year for a lot of people. And I just want you to know that, President Biden and Vice President Harris, in the whole team, all the secretaries, they're working hard to make sure that we continue to create opportunities for people. And we want to support your organizations, and anything that I can do as in my role as Secretary of Labor, certainly reach out to me and call us. If you see areas that we can improve on, let us know. See areas that we need to improve on, let us know. And areas that, however we can be helpful at. I'm a big believer in collaboration. I'm a big believer in hearing people out. I'm a big believer in taking ideas and suggestions. So I want to just let everyone know that opportunity is there.
My audience, I'm sure, will really appreciate you saying that today, Mr. Secretary. If I can ask you to share one final question, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope is when I go around the country, I see so many young kids in our country that we need to continue to work hard for, so they have an America that is free of what people have put up with in the past: discrimination, racism, ageism, sexism, all the bad isms. I think that we have to do that. What gives me hope is that we have a president that truly believes in the soul of our nation. When he talks about that, he means bringing us all back to being a country that is successful and thriving. And he knows that we're not a successful country if we're not all thriving together. And the one thing I'll also say is that, and it's not necessarily to end it, but when the president talked about these two investments, if you look at the history of investments in our country, there's always been a group of people that have been left out. And generally that group of people are communities of color and women, and to some degree immigrants that have been left out of any investments that have happened. The president has made it crystal clear to all of us that this cannot happen this time. So I'm hopeful that we have an administration in Washington, and we have amazing advocates that are watching us today talk, that are going to continue to do great work.
Labor Secretary Marty Walsh, I really appreciate you, sir. Thank you for sharing your time with us, and for my audience to at least have an opportunity to hear from you about all things labor but also your commitment to the Senior Community Service and Employment Program. That brings us all together.
I love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.